we have seen some very heavy rainfall already starting from Friday, but also overnight in the northern rivers, but also southeast Queensland. Some of those heaviest falls that we've seen overnight was 334 millimetres at Lower Springbrook, and the heaviest being just north of the border with 475 millimetres at Upper Springbrook. So some very heavy rainfall has already fallen and resulted in flash flooding and a number of rescues. So some very dangerous conditions that we've already seen. Now for the northern rivers and mid-north coast areas, we will see a return of the heavy rainfall. So currently we are seeing relatively calm conditions, but very important to be aware that we are expecting heavy rainfall to start again for the northern rivers and mid-north coast areas, with widespread totals of 100 to 200 millimetres expected for those regions. Now we also have very strong damaging winds across the northern coast. Now that is coinciding with king tides. This means that we have a greater risk of coastal erosion and coastal inundation. So that's yet another risk of being very mindful of the damaging surf conditions that we are also having. But again, the key concern is the heavy rainfall that we are expecting starting tonight and into tomorrow, with very heavy rainfall expected for the northern rivers and mid-north coast areas. This will also have localized intense heavy rainfall, again increasing that risk of flash flooding, but of course also have a number of flood warnings out. And I'll hand over to my colleague Justin Robertson, our flood manager, to talk you through the flood warnings.
Okay, thank you, Agatha. I guess I just really want to emphasise we've had some very heavy rainfall overnight, and what that means is we had some flooding for those communities in the northern rivers, and especially that communities of Tombolgum. I just saw on the news this morning, you can see the heavy rainfall and flooding across the streets of Tombolgum. We also had some minor flooding at Chindra. We also had some good river level rises through the Bellingen catchment and in the area of Marshalls Creek up in Billinudgel. So our real focus for the next 24 to 48 hours is this rainfall we're expecting. And the Bureau updated its flood watch this morning. And for those impacted the communities, I'll just want to reiterate some of our key concerns. We're expecting for that Tweed River Valley, there's potential for some renewed minor to moderate flooding. Similar for the area of the Brunswick and Marshalls Creek, really some potential there for some renewed minor to moderate flooding as well. So the Wilson River, which are very important impacted community there of Lismore, we're expecting that minor to moderate flood is possible. Similarly for the Richmond River, we've got that expectation of possible minor to moderate flooding. The Clarence River at Glarfton, we're expecting some minor flooding as possible there. So the Arara River, we've got Coots Crossing and Glenray, we're expecting even moderate flooding for those communities. Also the Coffs Coast, which had that severe flooding near Sawtell, and also in Coffs Harbour and those communities, we're expecting there's a bit of potential for some minor flooding in those areas as well. And for the Nambucca River, expecting some minor to moderate flooding there. And Macleay at Kempsey, there's potential for some minor flooding. And for the Hastings River, we've got minor flooding. And for the Manning and Gloucester, we've also got some minor flooding. I guess I just want to reiterate, these are dynamic weather systems, and you should always expect the unexpected, and for people just to keep aware of the Bureau's updates to its warnings. So our flood operations here are running 24/7, and we'll be updating those forecasts and warnings throughout the night, and working with our local SES volunteers and paid staff to try and keep those people in the northern rivers and the mid-north coast safe from this flood event. So I think with that I'll hand over to our Commissioner, Carleen York from the SES.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks. So it's been a very busy time for the New South Wales State Emergency Service over the last 48 to 72 hours. Firstly in the mid-north coast area, and particularly last night moving up into northern rivers that has been outlined. We've done about 4 flood rescues. We've done 4 flood rescues and made sure that people are safe, and those people, I'm informed, are safe and well. We've also evacuated around 20 caravans in anticipation at the Murwillumbah Showground, just to get them to higher ground and a safe location. I'd take this opportunity to remind people the weather, as outlined, is quite going to be quite heavy over the next few days, with the effects of flooding in a large number of areas of those rivers that have been outlined. It's not a time to take a chance and drive through those floodwaters. It does put yourself in danger, as well as my SES volunteers that need to come out to the call. We've had around, over this full event, 700 calls for assistance, and particularly last night it was a busy time of over 200 calls. We have also sent additional crews up into the Northern Rivers District to assist that community with preparation and, if needed, any evacuations, and particularly door knocking in those areas where people are at risk of having their houses flooded. There's been with the rain, there's been a large amount of strong winds as well, so our crews have been particularly busy in relation to reports of roof damage and leaking into houses. So I would remind people of cleaning out the gutters if they can before these heavy rains come again, just preparing your house to make sure that there's no loose items around. As I said, don't drive through the flood waters. Be very careful, because it is quite deceptive in relation to the depth of when you're going into those flood waters, and it can change very quickly with these heavy amounts of rain that are coming. We are also warning those people who might be going on holidays. Obviously everyone, after the restrictions for COVID-19 have been lifted, want to get out and about across the state and travel. Be very careful where you're going to, plan ahead, and as Justin said, always look at and be up to date with the Bureau of Meteorology's website. SES has information there and a link through to the website as well, and we will be communicating with the communities that may be in danger to let them know. So be aware of your surroundings, be aware of where you might be parking a caravan or you may be driving, and listen to those warnings that are put out by the New South Wales SES. I remind people of the numbers to ring, so if you need assistance from the SES, ring 132 500, but if it is life-threatening, please ring 000. Thank you. Open for any questions.
Can I ask, those 4 flood rescues, can you tell us what the nature of those were? Were they relating to cars in floodwaters?
I believe at least one, or if not two, were related to cars in floodwaters. I don't have the detail. There was also a call out for an animal rescue, but regretfully we can't get to those animals at this stage, so if the waters recede, believe it's some horses, we will go into that area as well. But all the people that in the flood rescues have been made safe and well.
Are you getting any reports of people driving through floodwaters at this stage?
I've seen some of the vision with not only people driving through floodwaters, but children playing in floodwaters. Again, very deceptive when there's drains around, and over the years there have been some serious accidents, if not fatalities, in relation to that. The water is fast flowing. It is not like it normally is in a quiet period in those rivers or gutters and drain area. So I would remind people to stay out of those waters no matter what they do. It looks like fun, but it can be quite serious. Also, just remind those shop owners, I am aware that some of the shop owners are placing things up to drier locations, raising them up. Now's the time to get ready while it's daylight. Now's the time to prepare your stock and your shop. There have been a lot of calls on SES to assist with sandbagging, which is a really good indication that people are preparing, listening to our messages and making sure that their property and themselves are safe.
You say you've had 700 calls so far. How are you preparing resources with things expected to get worse tonight?
Well, we've put more call operators on so that we can make sure that we answer all those calls where they come in. Obviously some of those are repeat calls for the same streets and same areas. The crews are out and about now, making sure that they are going down the streets of where it's expected to have some floodwaters, doing a lot of door knocking, preparing the people to do it. And as I said, we've sent some additional crews up to that area, and some people from Sydney are going up as well. So just to be prepared and to have as many resources that we can up there. We also rely on our partner emergency service agencies, Rural Fire Service, Fire and Rescue, and they come out when we need them to just increase those resources as needed.
Do you know roughly how many volunteers and paid staff are on the ground in that area?
No, I haven't been informed of the number, but I assure you that everyone up there is quite aware, and we're making as many resources as possible available. Okay.
Commissioner, I'll just ask a couple of questions if you don't mind. What's at the moment, obviously, and you sort of touched on holiday period, and a lot of these communities, I guess, from mid-north coast all the way into Queensland,
Yeah, we're always concerned at those people who aren't aware of their of the local area. Obviously, the locals have been through a number of these floods over the years, but again, to the locals, also don't take it for granted that this is the same as any other weather pattern, and be prepared. There are a lot of travellers going around up in that location, and because of the geography of the area where we've got the rivers flowing into the ocean and we've got the high tides, that does mean that the waters can't get away as quickly and will back up in certain areas. And obviously the nice places to have caravan parks are by the water, and very low lying, so at risk of flooding. So I ask those travellers and local people to again be aware of the messages we're sending out. Turn on the radio, listen to that, look at the websites and get as much information you can, and particularly tonight where there's a lot of rain forecast, don't be complacent that when you go to bed it will be the same as when you get up in the morning. Be aware if you're at one of those high risk areas.
Agatha, just I guess asking a little bit more about this general system. We've seen a lot of rain already overnight in the far north, but also southeast Queensland. Can you just give us kind of an overview of where this is all coming from and what it's doing?
Yep, so we have a coastal trough that has been the system that's been producing this heavy rainfall. So from Friday, that was impacting more the northern New South Wales region where we started to see some of that really heavy rainfall. That then did shift north. So currently there's rain over Queensland. That's also what's the reason why we have this period of a bit of a break for the region, and now we're expecting that trough to move back down, so that heavy rainfall is going to return tonight with those very heavy falls. But we did see some very heavy falls overnight, so widespread falls of 100 to 200 millimetres. That's very significant rainfall, but again, locally very heavy falls. We saw overnight rainfall of over 300 millimetres, so very significant. It has produced flash flooding, and now that rain is expected to come back over the northern rivers and mid-north coast. So again, widespread totals of 100 to 200 millimetres, but falling on very wet catchments with the rain that we've already seen. And again, that risk of intense heavy rainfall falling in short periods of time, again increasing that risk of flash flooding and conditions changing very, very rapidly.
And just to give a bit of a sense, so it's sitting sort of in southeast Queensland, and it just moves down through tonight and sort of into tomorrow, and just keeps running through tomorrow. Is that how it lines up?
Yeah, well, that's right. So the key concern in terms of the riskiest conditions with regards to heavy rainfall will be tonight and into tomorrow, and the system will continue moving. So we are expecting a generally wet week, but conditions will ease from Tuesday onwards. But again, still expecting wet conditions, but really that heavy rainfall, and the key area of concern is from tonight and into tomorrow.
And hearing reports of sort of estimates of up to 5 metre waves up in the sort of southeast Queensland, northern New South Wales, and then running down to Sydney as well.
Exactly, yeah. So we have very strong near gale force winds over South Queensland and northern New South Wales, currently producing waves of up to 5 metres, so very powerful, large waves. And again, coinciding with king tide, so increasing that risk of coastal erosion, but also coastal inundation. And again, with that heavy rainfall for those coastal locations, that again is exacerbating the potential for flooding and inundation for those regions. But those conditions are also going to be moving across the east coast. So we are even expecting damaging surf conditions even to central coast regions as well. So again, really important to be aware of any beachgoers. Again, the conditions on beaches as well, again, very dangerous as well.
I want to ask Justin, there's a lot of communities up there that have been through some pretty serious floods. Is this potentially getting up into some of those more concerning areas for northern rivers and the coast over the next couple of days, I guess, as well?
I think what's important about this flood event is it's very widespread in nature. We're covering an area all the way from the top of lower southeast Queensland right into New South Wales, all the way down to the mid-north coast, and we've got that flood watch out for Manning all the way down in the lower mid-north coast. So in terms of how big is this flood compared to previous floods, we're not expecting it to be large as, say, the TC Debbie flood, but we're expecting our flood to be in that minor to moderate flood levels. But I think the thing we need to be really aware of is this is a dynamic weather situation, and we could get areas that see much higher rainfall than is obvious from the guidance we have at the moment. So like I say, it's very important for community members to keep in touch with the latest Bureau warnings and information provided by the SES, and we'll be updating those forecasts both during today, but overnight tonight and into tomorrow.
So you would expect, I guess, more warnings to be issued over the next 24 hours and for potentially different areas as well?
Yeah, definitely. So over the next 24 hours, you'll see a ramp up in the warnings that the Bureau is issuing for those impacted river systems. It really depends on how the rainfall event unfolds and which areas get impacted the most. But just remain aware that this is a dynamic situation and that the warnings in the areas impacted will change.